Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today I'm going to talk about 6 Doctor Who opinions that fans say that I don't get at all, that I just can't wrap my head around. You know, you ever met a Doctor Who fan and they say something and you're just like, hey? What? Really? So this is kind of that. 6 things I hear people say that I just leaves me flabbergasted. And I'm going to approach this with a more antagonistic view than I normally would, but that's more just for fun, because I'm feeling playful today. The first one on the list is when I hear people say that the 12th Doctor is the best Doctor. Because I'm always like, why? One of the best actors to play the Doctor? Perhaps. His acting skills are amazing. I like Peter Capaldi, but a lot of it boils down to what you consider to be a good doctor, the traits that make a good doctor. What in your mind are the traits that make a phenomenal doctor? And that, of course, is going to vary from person to person. I have a little more trouble with the more serious doctors like Hartnell and Colin, and even Davison and Capaldi. I prefer the more Tom Bakerish, Patrick Troughton doctors. Like, for me, when I think of the Doctor, the instant image in my head is Tom Baker. He's kind of the gold standard for me. He's the one I think of when I think of the Doctor. Just, he's the one that pops in my mind with that iconic outfit of his. But his personality is also kind of the bar. That's how I think the Doctor is, which isn't fair because every Doctor is different. But his more quirky, eccentric, witty playfulness, to me, is the Doctor. And Troughton has a lot of that. Even McCoy at times has that, but McCoy could be the more serious one too. McCoy's interesting. Now, I'm also a big Jon Pertwee fan. Jon Pertwee's vastly different from Tom Baker. I get that. But John's the only one actor I think who's played it serious without coming off as arrogant. And John's Doctor is still arrogant, but not like annoyingly arrogant. Like the first Doctor can be bothersome. The 6th Doctor can be very irritating at times. The 5th Doctor at times. And the Capaldi, especially early in his run, can just be off-putting. The only one who's ever played it straight like that that's never off-putting to me is Jon Pertwee. I don't know, it's just something about the way he plays it. And considering the setting he's in, when he's exiled, he's with UNIT, he's working with a military group, it kind of all fits. Because it is kind of a family unit, pun intended, going on right there. With Capaldi, it doesn't work for me until about Series 10. I like Series 10, because by Series 10, he reminds me of Jon Pertwee. I always say that the only Doctor that reminds me of Jon Pertwee is Series 10 Capaldi. But it still doesn't quite click for me. So when I get why people like Capaldi, and I have nothing against that. But I can never wrap my head around when people are like, he's the best Doctor, he's my favorite Doctor. I cannot get that, because he's too serious. I mean, he has his playful moments, and I love them. I will be your victim for this evening. Are you my mummy? But again, I think of like Patrick Troughton. I think of Tom Baker. You know, I think of even like David Tennant and Matt Smith with that playfulness they have. And Capaldi doesn't have enough of that, and he's too dark. That in his very first episode, he's talking about the scarf. He's like, I gotta find a really long scarf. Wait, no, I'm over that. That was stupid. I'm sitting here like, did you just insulted the scarf in your first episode? Oh no, you gotta go. You gotta go. You don't insult the scarf. I don't think I ever quite got over that. So yeah, that is one thing that I just can't wrap my head around, why people would like Capaldi better than any other Doctor. Even if he's one of the best actors to play the role, just quintessentially there are too many flaws with his Doctor that just bother me. At least until Series 10, where it's a lot better. Another one is these people who complain about Doctor Who's cheap effects. Like, okay, the show's done on a budget. I don't get this when people, like, YouTubers, like one in particular, like, it's like they'll mention, I know Doctor Who was done on a cheap budget and that didn't have any money, and then they'll immediately bash it. And I'm like, okay, you just said what? Don't get me wrong, I get it sometimes. Sometimes they get ambitious, stuff doesn't work. Power of Kroll, perfect example. Shouldn't even have been attempted. Because the story's decent for Power of Kroll, the execution is bad. And I get that happens sometimes, but there's a lot of times they pull off masterpieces. Ark in Space. Painted green bubble wrap. Masterpiece of a story still. Because the story is so good, it elevates everything. I mean, you can nitpick little things, but why? Why would you want to nitpick something? Just watch it and enjoy it. Oh, the set kind of wobbled. Yeah, you know how much money they probably had to make it? You don't. Have you ever met these people that just don't get Classic Who? Maybe they're people you know. Maybe they're people, again, you see on YouTube. It's like they know, but they don't get it. It's like for some reason they don't connect with it. They probably started with the modern series, and for some reason, maybe they're younger and they view things with 21st century sensibilities, 2022 sensibilities on set design and budget and CG effects. And even though they know that stuff wasn't done like that back then, they don't fully get it. It's like they're not 100% connecting with that idea, if that makes sense. That drives me crazy. I see no reason to nitpick a set. I mean, that's what willing suspension of disbelief is for. Yeah, there are times it's so bad it's hard to overlook. Invasion of Time, perfect example. It's bad. It is the budget that kills that story and the bad companion departure. I'll admit, sometimes it's too much, but not like, I think somebody was insulting Dragonfire's set one time. Dragonfire's set looks great. I think Dragonfire has a really good looking set. Some of its effects look good. I like its alien design. The villain's death scene is one of the most gruesome in Classic Who. Yeah, I don't really understand the bashing, the realization of something like Dragonfire. I think it was executed pretty well, except for the odd cliffhanger scene. But other than that, executed very well. You look at something like Genesis of the Daleks, and it's still a masterpiece, one of the most iconic episodes of Doctor Who ever made. So I can never wrap my head around, I can't watch the old series because I just can't get into it. Now, that's fine. If for some reason you can't get into it, that's your business. My best friend watched some of the modern series with me. He tried watching The Deadly Assassin. He couldn't make it. That's fair. It's just not his cup of tea. But for people who, some people don't get it. Okay. This is really getting away from me. Some people who watch the modern series, they started with the modern series, they don't really watch all of the classic series. They catch the cliff notes of the classic series because they want to try to watch the classic series, or they want to say they've watched the classic series, but they only catch the famous stories and then stuff like a Doctor's first story and a Doctor's last story. That's kind of a big thing. People like to watch a Doctor's first story. People like to watch a Doctor's last story, and some of those aren't exactly the best. There's a lot of Last Doctor stories that are kind of and post-regeneration stories that are kind of And then they catch the cliff notes, Genesis, Caves, Inferno, stuff like that. Tomb of the Cybermen, just the ones they hear. And they don't really, I don't know, that's kind of getting away from me. It just bugs me. I don't know, I can't really articulate my thoughts today. This one's really getting away from me. Next one on the list. People who think the Caves of Androzani is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Look, the Caves of Androzani is great. It's a masterpiece. It's a good story. It is probably objectively Davison's best story, and certainly his best performance. It's not my favorite story by Davison. It's probably my third favorite, because my favorite's Castrovalva. My second favorite's The Five Doctors. And then Caves and Enlightenment may be tied for fourth, because I like the special edition of Enlightenment a lot. And that's fine. When people tell me Caves is their favorite Davison story, I'm cool. If they say it's one of their favorites from the 80s, I'm cool. It's when somebody's like, did you know Caves of Androzani is the best classic Doctor Who story? That's when I'm like, you're full of shit. Now, look, if it's your favorite, it's your favorite. I don't get it. But to say it's the best, I don't get that at all. It's a good story. It is. It's Robert Holmes. I love Robert Holmes. He's my favorite Doctor Who writer. He's amazing. And he does put the Doctor through hell, which is exactly what he literally said he wanted to do. It's a great performance by Davison. I love the fact that there's no good side in this. Everybody the Doctor's having to interact with is, at one level or another, a piece of crap. And he's just got to get out of there. Love that. But for me, there's so many other stories that are better, like Genesis. Genesis, you have Tom Baker. You have a better Doctor. You have Harry and Sarah. You have better companions. You have the introduction of Davros and what I think is Davros's best performance and best story. You have a great origin story for the Daleks. And then you have some really good performances from other actors, like the guy playing Niter is great on it. I really enjoy that, and it's nice seeing how the Thals weren't just like always the goody two shoes. They were kind of a gray area, just like the Khalids were. I like that. There's so many others. City of Death is way more fun. I think that's the thing about Caves. Caves is too serious for me. It's not. It doesn't have a strong rewatchability. It's one I go back to when I'm in the mood to rewatch it, which is about once every 4 or 5 years. Whereas other stories are so much more fun. Like, even Destiny has more of a rewatchability. I don't think Destiny's a better story. I think Caves is a better story than Destiny. But Destiny is more rewatchable because it's fun. City of Death is fun. Even Horns of Nymon is fun. Not a better story. I'm not arguing that point. But, you know, Inferno, better story. Spearheads, better story. Mine Robber, better story. Way more fun. Way more interesting. Way more out there. I love it. So I never get when people try to tell me that Caves of Androzani is, like, the best Classic Who story. #1. I'm always like, really? You're going to rank that above, you know, Tom Baker stories? John Pertwee stories, Patrick Troughton stories, who are all better doctors, who all have better companions, and who all just have better stories. I cannot get that. I mean, if it's your favorite, it's your favorite. That's fine. But to say it's objectively the best, I'm not buying it. I can name you a dozen better Tom Baker stories. And you know what? That's actually going to be a video, I think. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a video where I list at least a dozen better Tom Baker stories to me than Caves of Androzani. Great story. But it's interesting because it's a masterpiece and it's still overrated. I am never, ever going to be able to understand how somebody can try to tell me it's objectively the best Doctor Who story in Classic Who, or Doctor Who, period. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Another one on the list is people that crap on the McCoy era. And any time people just crap on the McCoy era the way they do, I assume one of two things. One, it's raining outside, pouring out there. One, they've never actually watched the McCoy era. Two, they haven't watched the McCoy era since the 80s. One or the other. Because, you know, I've seen most of the McCoy era. The only story I haven't seen is Happiness Patrol. So I got a pretty good feel for it. It's like, again, going back to what I said earlier about people just, you know, a lot of modern Who fans, I think they just kind of catch the cliff notes. You know, like most of them, they want to watch a Doctor's first story, they want to watch a Doctor's last story, and they want to kind of hit the big names they hear. You know the ones I mean. Sadly, since, again, everybody wants to watch a Doctor's first story and a Doctor's last story, that means they're going to see Time in the Rani. And I swear, people watch Time in the Rani, and they're like, boy, the McCoy era sucks. How do you know the McCoy era sucks? Oh, I saw Time in the Rani. And what other one? Well, I saw Time in the Rani, and it was just bad, and I didn't watch anymore. That's like watching Encounter at Farpoint and never watching Star Trek The Next Generation because you'll think it's mediocre. Because I think most Star Trek fans will tell you Next Generation didn't really hit its stride until Season 3. There's some good episodes in Season 1 and 2, but Season 3 is where it really hit its stride. So if you just watch Encounter at Farpoint, you're missing out. Same thing here with the McCoy era. If you just base the McCoy era off Time in the Rani, you are vastly mistaken. Or maybe they've seen some of Season 24, which is phenomenal, and they base the whole thing on it, especially watching McCoy's Doctor evolve. His Doctor evolves much like the first Doctor has an arc, and the 12th Doctor has an arc, where their Doctors grow and change over their 3 seasons. McCoy's Doctor does this too. There's 24 McCoy, 25 McCoy, and 26 McCoy, and they're all vastly different, with 25 McCoy kind of being the halfway point between 24 and 26. But there's so many good stories, so many masterpieces. Survival is a fantastic send-off for the classic series, even though it's not McCoy's best story. A lot of people probably watch Survival because it is the final story. And it's a good one, but it's not the best one. Like, watch Curse of Fenric. Watch Ghostlight. Even if you don't understand Ghostlight's fascinating. Battlefield is good, if it's slightly flawed with that incidental music. Great send-off for the Brigadier. Remembrance is good, if overrated, as I've talked about recently. Paradise Towers is the hidden gem from the McCoy era. Oh my God, do I love Paradise Towers. And Dragonfire is really good too. There are some really good things there. So anytime I hear people trashing on the McCoy era, I assume they haven't watched it, or they just haven't watched it in a long time. Or else they've got this very incorrect opinion that it's silly and campy and rainbowy and happy and doesn't take itself seriously, and it's You know, it's just a pantomime or parody at that point. It's not. The McCoy Era deals with some very serious issues. Trust me. I mean, watch season 24. The actual themes of all of the episodes after Time in the Rounding are actually pretty dark. And a lot of stuff going on in 26 is pretty dark, too. And some of the stuff even in season 25. There's some dark stuff going on. You just have to kind of read between the lines and pay attention. And another one is these people that try to tell me the 12th Doctor's era is amazing. Now, we already talked about the 12th Doctor himself. Let's talk about his era. You ever see these people who just defend his era to the death? Like, they will die on that hill. I don't get that. They're like, the Capaldi era is so it's so underrated. I'm like, no, it's not. I don't care how much you like Capaldi as the Doctor. That's fine. I mean, I still don't get it, but that's fine. Well, I get Capaldi as the Doctor. I don't know why you think it was his favorite. But his era is very mixed. I mean, the last consistently good season we had in Doctor Who was actually Series 12. But before that was Series 5. And even Series 5 had some stinkers in it, but it's pretty consistent. But Capaldi's run has no consistently good seasons. I mean, Season 8, or Series 8, you have what? Listen is garbage. Caretaker is boring. And then the finale's not that good either. The finale two-part is okay. It's okay. And then In the Forest of the Night is garbage. You got stinkers in there. Series 9 is almost completely stinkers. You have literally the worst Dalek story ever made with the Magician's Apprentice two-parter. My least favorite Dalek story of all time. Has a couple nice moments, but they get crapped on at the end. Yeah, the girl who died, woman who lived two-parter, which is uninteresting, goes nowhere. The Zygon two-parter, which is way too long. It's a very boring two-parter with a great speech at the end. I mean, really, the only thing Series 9 has going is the late two-parter, Heaven Sent, and then Sleep No More is a bit underrated. It's not perfect, but I liked it more on rewatch recently. And then you have Series 10, which is, while I think Capaldi's best series, still has the Monk trilogy with the second and third parts of it being uninteresting. I like Extremis, don't like the other two. Eaters of Light isn't good, which is highly disappointing since it's the only modern Who story written by a classic Doctor Who writer. Doesn't really go anywhere. And I feel like there's another one I'm forgetting. I feel like there's another one. Oxygen. Yeah, I don't like Oxygen either. Though I get that one's one people have different opinions on. Some people like Oxygen, some people don't. But I think most people will agree the Monk trilogy is not great. So there's just... His era is very up and down. When I rated the whole series, I mean, it was almost split in half. Like, half of it I liked, half of it I didn't, with about 4 stories in the middle. It's just a mixed bag. So I don't understand these people who try to talk about how it's one of the best eras ever. It does not have the consistency of Eccleston's season, which has no bad stories in it. Series 1 is practically flawless. Series 2 is a mixed bag, to be fair. That is the one Davis era that's really mixed. Series 3 has no bad episodes, in my opinion. Series 4 is really good with only 2 or 3 duds that I don't really care for. And then the specials are mostly good, except Waters of Mars, which is still decent. And then Series 5 is pretty consistent. And then we don't get another consistently good series until Series 12, which is an odd thing to say. Because Series 12 is actually pretty consistently good. And at least until Timeless Children craps all over everything. And then the last one I want to talk about. These people who have this opinion that it took the Chibnall era and Jodie Whittaker's Doctor to drag Doctor Who kicking and screaming into the 21st century. What? It's like some people seem to think that putting a woman in the role of the Doctor finally has Doctor Who where it needs to be in the 21st century. And my thing is, this has to be these younger people on Twitter who don't even watch the show probably, certainly don't watch the classic series, because if they watch the classic series, they would know that strong women have been in Doctor Who since An Unearthly Child. I mean, have you ever seen Barbara? Barbara's an amazing character. I mean, you look at her even in The Edge of Destruction, which is like the 3rd story. So we're talking about what? Easing into 1964 here? She's the one who figures everything out in Edge of Destruction. She figures out what's going on. She's the one who saves the day. The Doctor even has to apologize to her and says to her, admits it, you saved all our lives. You did good, you know? And then you see the Doctor being nice to her. The first time the Doctor really views Ian and Barbara less as a hindrance and more as actual companions he might want to interact with. And it's because Barbara saves the day. Barbara's a very strong character. Now, on the other hand, you do have Susan, who is... So, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward. But Barbara is a very strong character. And then you have Vicky, and what little bit I've seen of Vicky, I like her. I think she's a strong character. You have Polly, who is very strong. You have Victoria, who's kind of more the damsel in distress type. But for her character, that works, because she didn't choose to be a companion. She ended up kind of getting forced into it because her dad died, and the second Doctor promised to watch after her. So she never really wanted to be doing all this. So when she burned out on it, she left. Makes sense for her character. But then you have Zoe. And Zoe's great. She's a genius. She's intelligent. She's from the future. She's smart. Smart, strong female characters have been in Doctor Who since the 60s. And even into the 70s, you have Liz Shaw, who is a scientist. Look at all the degrees she has. Look at the way she talks with that confident knowledge she has. I absolutely love season 7 because Liz Shaw is just so much fun to watch. And then look at Jo. Even though Jo's a little ditzy, she's a very strong character. She does her own thing. Like, if you tell Jo not to do a thing, what is Jo going to do? She's going to go do the thing. Like in The Green Death, when she leaves that note, gone to go get you a maggot. That's Jo. Jo is going to go do so. She's a strong character. Sarah Jane, strong character. Dr. Leela, strong character. Doctor Who has had strong female characters since the show began. So if that's what it takes for these people on Twitter to think Doctor Who's in the 21st century, then Doctor Who got dragged into the 21st century on November of 1963. It's ahead of the curve. It's a TV show about time travel. There you go. So it's just ludicrous to me that some people think that the Doctor literally has to have a vagina for the show to be proper 21st century and for all audiences. Makes no sense to me, especially since the way they wrote the first female Doctor is unsure of herself, no self-confidence whatsoever, never in control of the situation, not good at communicating with her companions, doesn't know how to handle emotions. We literally have stronger written female characters in the 60s than the first female Doctor is written. Literally, Doctor Who in the 60s, in some ways, is more 21st century than Doctor Who now. I mean, even Clara, as much as I don't like Clara as a companion, was more self-confident than the 13th Doctor. Clara was a more confident Doctor than the actual first female Doctor. I mean, that self-confidence is what got Clara killed. I mean, that's the interesting thing about her. She tries to be the Doctor, and since she isn't the Doctor, she can't pull it off, and she gets killed because of it. It's her own fault, and she knows that. It's an interesting lesson there. So, it doesn't take that. How to articulate this? You know, I get so tired of people like, Doctor Who needs to stop retreating toward the past, or, if they cast another white man in the role, they'll just be looking toward the past. I'm like, so what if they do? You act like, if they do cast, say, another white male on Doctor, Doctor Who's still stuck in the 20th century. Well, you know what? Maybe he'll have a strong female companion. Because, you know what? The strongest female companions that have ever been in the show have been when the show had a male Doctor. Sorry! Yaz, not the strongest female companion. The 13th Doctor, not the strongest female character in Doctor Who. By a country mile. Classic Doctor Who, in some ways, was better at doing female companions and making them stronger than modern. Look at Ace. How many modern companions can stack up to Ace? Like Donna and Martha, yeah. Rose, Series 1 Rose, yes. Series 2 Rose, no. Donna and Martha, I think, are both really good. I like both of them. But, I don't ever like the idea that a show has to be brought into the 21st century, because that's a very broad term that is going to be subjective from person to person. I didn't mind them casting a female Doctor. It's fine. The problem is that what they did with her, it's the same thing with Capaldi. Capaldi is a great actor, but I didn't like how they wrote his Doctor for much of his run. Same thing with Whittaker. I like Whittaker as an actress. But how they characterized her Doctor bugs me, just like with Capaldi. Same issue. For the same reason why if somebody came up to me and said, Jodie Whittaker's my favorite Doctor, I'm going to be like, Well, you are in for a good time because you've obviously never ever seen any of the other Doctors. So you're in for a hoot. If you love Jodie Whittaker, you're going to love Doctor Who. Go watch a guy named Tom Baker. He's great. So that's my thoughts on that. This has really just been rambling. I couldn't really get my thoughts organized. Do you ever have one of those days? Maybe it's the weather. I don't know. Like 2 days ago it was 81 degrees, and today, when I recorded that other video, and today the high is 48 and it's pouring rain. You know, the weather in Mississippi is extremely bipolar. I don't know what to tell you. I swear, the weather around here is like listening to winning lottery numbers. 72, 24, 85, 37, 48. Anyway, that's my thoughts on all of that. It has definitely been a ramble today. If you've liked this video, please click the like button and the subscribe button. I'm almost at 700 subscribers. I also have a Patreon if you like what I do and like to contribute to what I do. There is a link to that down in the description as well. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything Doctor Who related or sci-fi related or just in general you would like me to unbox and have a look at. My P.O. box is down in the description below. I also have a link to my Amazon wish list as well if you would like to check that out. It's been updated recently. Most importantly though, thank you for watching.